Today, we are pulling back the curtain on something that affects all of us. The subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, ways the media and governments can influence how we think. We're going to break down what's basically a playbook for manipulation. Now, the point here isn't to make you cynical, but to make all of us a whole lot smarter. You know that feeling, right? That little suspicion when you're watching the news or scrolling through your feed, that it's all designed to push you in a certain direction, to kind of shape your opinions without you even clocking it. Well, guess what? You're probably not wrong. So how exactly does it work? Is there a method to the madness? Well, luckily for us, we've got a guide. The incredible linguist and social critic Noam Chomsky. He actually analyzed these methods and basically laid them all out for us to see. What Chomsky did was compile a list of 10, just 10 key strategies that are used over and over again to manipulate public opinion. Think of it like this. It's the rule book for a game you might not have even known you were playing. But by learning these rules, you can start to see the game for what it is. So let's dive into the first part of this playbook. Okay, so this first set of strategies, it's all about controlling your focus. I mean, think about it. If they can control what you're paying attention to, they pretty much control the entire conversation. This one is the absolute classic. It's that constant, never-ending flood of celebrity gossip, sports drama, reality TV, all that trivial news that completely buries the important stuff. The whole goal is to keep you looking over here so you don't notice the massive economic and political decisions happening over there. And check out this quote. This is from a document called Silent Weapons for Quiet War, and it just lays the goal out there plain as day. A public that's constantly busy, distracted, and overwhelmed simply has no time for critical thought, no time to ask the hard questions. It's a really powerful and very deliberate way to keep control. Oh, you're going to recognize this one. It's like a little three-act play. First, a problem is either created or just allowed to get worse. Think rising crime or a sudden economic crisis. Second, this creates a huge public reaction, right? People are scared, they're angry, they demand that something be done. And then, third, the people in power step in with the solution they wanted to implement all along. Things like restrictive new laws or unpopular economic policies. So how do you push through a change that you know people would absolutely hate? Well, you don't do it all at once. No way. You do it gradually, bit by bit, year after year. It's exactly like that old analogy of boiling a frog. You turn up the heat so slowly it doesn't even realize it's in trouble until it's way too late. This is how you see things like social programs or workers' rights get eroded over decades. And this is the painful but necessary argument. You've heard this one a million times. A really unpopular decision, like massive budget cuts, is framed as a sacrifice we just have to make today for a much better tomorrow. See, it's a lot easier for us to swallow a sacrifice in the future than one right now. It gives the public time to get used to the idea and eventually just accept it with resignation. Okay, so now the playbook kind of shifts gears. This next set of strategies goes beyond just distracting us. These are designed to actively weaken our ability to think for ourselves, and this is where the manipulation gets really, really psychological. Have you ever noticed how some ads or political speeches use a really simple, almost childlike tone? That is totally by design. The source text puts it perfectly. If you talk to someone as if they're 12 years old, there's a good chance they'll respond without their usual critical sense, just like a 12-year-old would. Strategy number 6 is a big one. Using emotion to bypass reflection. This is an absolute classic. Appealing to our emotions, our fears, our anger, our hopes, is the fastest way to short-circuit rational thought. When we're all fired up and emotional, our critical thinking skills just kind of take a back seat. And that makes us way more open to suggestion, to having ideas and fears planted directly in our subconscious. And once our rational minds are sidelined, it's easier to put in place a much more permanent strategy, keeping people in ignorance. This quote here is, well, it's chilling in how honest it is. It basically says that education for the lower classes has to be kept mediocre, on purpose, so that the gap in knowledge between them and the upper classes can never be closed. It's a stark reminder. A knowledge gap is a power gap. This next strategy works on a cultural level. It's all about pushing this idea that it's somehow fashionable or cool to be stupid, vulgar, and uneducated. By making intellectual curiosity seem boring or elitist, people are actively discouraged from questioning the information and entertainment that they're constantly being fed.
Now, this one is just deeply insidious. It's all about making you believe that if you're struggling, if you're unemployed or in debt or just unhappy, it's all your fault. It's a personal failure of your own intelligence or effort. What this does is it takes all that righteous anger that could be aimed at a flawed system and it turns it inward. That creates guilt and depression, which leads to inaction. Because, hey, if it's all your fault, why would you ever rebel?
And that brings us to the final and maybe most powerful strategy in our modern world. Thanks to decades of research in psychology, neurobiology, and now, obviously, massive amounts of our personal data, the system has a scarily sophisticated understanding of human behavior. It often knows our triggers and our weaknesses better than we know them ourselves, and that gives it this immense power to influence our choices. This isn't science fiction. It's the engine running the feeds we scroll through every single day.
Okay, that was a lot, and it's pretty heavy stuff, right? But here is the entire point of this. The ultimate antidote to all of this manipulation is just awareness. Once you know the plays in the playbook, you can't unsee them. And that makes you a much, much harder person to manipulate.
So what's the big takeaway? Well, here's your personal spotter's guide. Learn to spot the distractions for what they are. Start looking for that problem, reaction, solution setup. Always question purely emotional appeals. And maybe most important of all, never stop valuing education and critical thinking. And don't be afraid to question the systems around you. This is your toolkit. So we've just walked through the 10 core strategies of manipulation. The goal here wasn't to leave you feeling powerless, not at all. It was to hand you the playbook so you can recognize the game while it's being played. So I'll leave you with this question. Armed with this knowledge, what are you going to see differently the next time you turn on the news or scroll through your feed?